Just like how tanks got a lot better overall from crazy buffs a few seasons back, now damage heroes are really strong across the ranks. There are only a few heroes that struggle just a bit too much to be viable, but these health changes combined with a lot of power creep added up over the recent patches has also changed the top heroes a lot. So let's get into the DPS tier list of Season 12, ranking how playable they are across all the maps and how much impact they can have. If you're looking to rank up on your favorite heroes, check out the link in the description below to get access to a GameLeap membership. There are tons of guides and courses that can level up your game and help you get better, faster. Make sure to check it out and enjoy the video. Starting at D tier with the one hero that's just a bit too weak, Bastion. But it's safe to say that if Bastion is the weakest DPS, it's a good state for the game. Other heroes with a big hitbox and limited mobility have more consistent ability pressure. For Bastion, it's just a turret form and that's it. If you're left alone to your own devices and can keep churning out massive damage in your form without dying during or after, you'll be as effective, if not more so, than even the top DPS. But Bastion is in D tier because countering him is easy. Not only does his Gatling gun damage get halved into armor, but most of the top tanks can handle the brunt of the turret form duration with no problem. Bastion may get some really good benefits from the improved armor and his damage reduction in turret form, but at the very best, he's just a decent hero. He's mostly weak because he's just not threatening enough outside of his long turret form cooldown. And as for his high burst damage specialty, there are also way better alternatives for heavily busting tanks, and especially ones that aren't as resource consuming as Bastion is. Next up, we're actually already skipping to B tier. So many heroes have been bumped up the ranks with all the different power shifts that have been going on, health going up and down, and damage numbers being tuned. So at the bottom of the mega packed B tier, we're starting with Torbjorn. The second worst DPS isn't a good spot, but Torb is strong for sure. His consistent spam breaks armor well, and his overload is always a good tank buster and survival tool. And although he doesn't win spam duels at long range, his turret and personal armor give him a great edge into most flankers. At the bottom of B tier, he's not a bad hero, but as his kit and ultimate are still very defensive, he's among the worst heroes for making an active positive difference in the game. And although he can counter high skill heroes decently well, he can also get himself countered by spam comps that easily poke him and his turret down from range. Next, we've got Widowmaker. She's objectively gotten better this patch, thanks to the health changes of a lot of heroes down to 225 HP. Just that small amount of 25 HP less means Widow can one-shot headshot those heroes 0.1 seconds faster. But although there are more nerfs to health bars than there are buffs to damage dealing, small changes like Sombra's virus buff and even Orisa's spear damage buff makes it way easier for Widowmaker to get one-shot instead. So it's not easier to survive, even if you can get kills faster against a good amount of heroes. Although Widow can do insanely much with good aim, she's also very weak to dive. So unless you're on an escort map where there's consistently long sightlines between both teams, she's hard to get away with against an equally good enemy team. Next, we've got Hanzo. Apparently the dev team is so scared of Hanzo ever becoming close to meta that they've nerfed him in the one patch where he could actually become more effective. There are now 7 other heroes that you can one-shot headshot, but losing 25 HP himself is a bigger problem. Hanzo's hitbox is big. He's not like the other heroes who have fast mobility to make up for the lowered health pool. Climbing on walls won't help you escape immediate damage, and the lunge only goes so far. When he's such a spammy hero, it's not ideal when he can be forced out so easily. So although he's still in B tier with a lot of spam, unless he has Widowmaker level escort maps, he's also going to struggle massively if anyone tries to duel him. Moving further into B tier, next is Venture. Those lowered health pools makes bursting down certain enemies that much easier. Still, Venture is near the bottom half of B tier because their low range limits the amount of viable maps they can work on. Venture always needs to engage to keep up the pressure. You can't easily slow down and just spam, so you'll need coordination with your team, which always brings heroes down in the tier list if they need it for sure to win. Venture can support their team by enabling them to push or by picking off flankers and backliners, so you're pretty limited compared to other heroes if your only option is to sweat for kills from outside the fight. It's definitely easier this patch, but locking Venture consistently isn't really possible yet. Moving on to another unconventional DPS, it's Junkrat. He's similar to Venture, but with his ranged armor-breaking spam, he's more useful in more situations. He has more range both in general and for his one-shot combo, so he's much less map-dependent. But even if both his flying DPS counters can be one-shot, he's still very easily outranged and outdueled if the map allows for it. Finally, right in the middle of B tier is Reaper. He marks the end of the range-limited heroes. The rest of the heroes in the game don't have it as bad as Reaper and the others do, whether it's being ineffective at range or vulnerable to close quarters like the snipers are. But in the current patch, Reaper is doing way better than the others. After recently getting his teleport speed and spread buffed, he's a way more balanced character. He's always been torn between busting tanks or winning on the flanks. Now it's a lot less punishing to choose the incorrect decision because he's good enough at both options. His high health and consistent damage pressure means that he still wins most tank duels. As long as you don't take it too aggressively, you should come away with the better health trade. And as for pressuring backline, The fast teleport makes Reaper really good at quickly scouting and then immediately engaging isolated targets. If your team is pinging, you don't even need to do any scouting yourself. You can just teleport across the map and start farming. The 35-meter targeting range gives you a lot of flexibility in setting up on the enemy team. So even if he's got that suboptimal shotgun damage, his increased engagement speed has made him a decent all-around threat. Moving on to Genji. He's been pretty balanced for a while, and this patch doesn't push him in either way too hard. He doesn't have enough poke to win games just by playing the right positions, so he's not A tier or higher with an automatic win neutral. But he is good enough that he'll win a lot of duels and have the occasional super high impact deflect in the front line. If your team is pushing, Genji's snowball potential is massive. A single dash reset can be all you need for the fight win guaranteed. Genji's a solid upper B tier hero. He can't get much higher right now with so many other heroes being more impactful. But let's not forget that Genji has been on the bad side of average for most of the game's history. I'm certainly grateful that he's still playable, even if it's not easy once you start getting higher up in ranks. Next we have Sombra. She's got one of the best buffs and one of the worst nerfs of this patch. More burst damage on her virus, and less max health. The virus has gotten scarily better over time, and now that so many heroes have been reduced to 225 HP, especially supports, Sombra is obviously way more lethal. She can simply delete enemies in the neutral. It's bad that she also has to suffer from 25 less health, but a translocator escape is either a clean getaway or your death. The health change does matter though. Sombra's become more of a glass cannon, with heavy burst damage but a massive vulnerability while diving. You're more likely to get a quick pick with your virus burst, but you're also easier to force out with the lower health. Simply put, Sombra's offensively stronger, so keep an eye out. But she's not much of a must pick since she still struggles into armor. On to the top 3 of B tier. First up is Symmetra. Before season 9, she had to have her 25 HP health bonus nerfed, but since she got it back in season 11, it hasn't been nerfed yet. She has an overly strong health pool with a high total and mostly shields, and her damage output is super flexible with long range high burst projectiles and a rapidly charging beam at close range. A lot of heroes have a flexible kit like this. Good at close range, good at long range, good mobility, and good survivability. With all that, Symmetra is not very easy to counter. She can manage most situations, and even has a crazy high skill ceiling with all the ways you can use Teleporter. Sim doesn't do anything too crazy besides the Teleporter though. Her damage is good, but it's not at the level of the A tier heroes. So although she's got really high potential, for now, she's the 3rd best B tier hero. Onto the 2nd best, it's Soldier. He's been overshadowed for a long time, but he at least still has his range. Even in Season 12, with a whole new game mode and a ton of strategies viable, having a long range is a great boost to your viability. Soldier is a decently flexible DPS. He can put out solid damage on the front line. Not too much because of his armor weakness, but still decent because of his high DPS after breaking it. It's pretty lucky that he's top of B tier even with a very generic kit, but it makes a lot of sense. Compared to previous heroes like Genji and Symmetra that can handle both close and long ranges, Soldier has more bite to his long range while still having decent close quarters control with his healing station and rocket burst. They won't be impacting half as much as Soldier with good positioning, even with great projectile aim. Still, with a weak ultimate, Soldier really falls flat. He may be more viable overall, but Visor is awful compared to the competition. He can just barely get enough done in his neutral that his mediocre ultimate is forgivable. Finally, to finish off B tier, it's Sojourn. The last round of railgun changes didn't leave her in a good place, but now they've all come together. This patch gave her a tighter spread on her railgun pellets, double energy gain on critical hits, and a reduced energy drain after 7 seconds. Her maximum rail shot damage may have been nerfed, but with these 3 changes, the new quantity of shots is outweighing the old quality. She can get these 100 damage bursts so often. It's a decent upgrade, but it's safe to say that she still isn't exactly better than before. The single hit burst is just so important, but at least with the improvement of her primary fire, her damage has gotten a massive upgrade in consistency and burst. Finally, we're at A tier. Starting off with Tracer, her recent nerf has almost made her fall into B tier. Although it's such a small change, the difference between 6 and 5.5 damage per bullet is massive for determining how good Tracer is. She's gone from 240 damage per clip to 220. She'll be dealing less damage to tanks overall, and struggle more to duel every hero that didn't get nerfed to 225 HP this patch. But luckily for Tracer, a lot of strong supports got their health nerfed to 225 HP, Kiriko and Lucio being 2 big ones. Tracer is definitely weaker, but the health changes this patch are just enough to keep her from being irrelevant. Her insanely high mobility is still great, so as long as her damage is enough to win duels, she's still an A tier, even if just by a close margin. Next up we have Pharah. She's also hanging on to the edge of A tier, but she's been 225 HP for a while now, and she's used to it. On top of that, Mercy's changes have made her more of a glass cannon, and combined with Pharah for the pharmacy combo, suddenly neither of them is as vulnerable anymore. Either way, alone, Pharah is still really strong. She's got burst damage, splash damage, and an easy time fighting close or long range. A hero who just has to spam to get value is pretty straightforward. You even have incredibly versatile mobility to play the right positions to keep that plan going. Pharah right now is great for both countering slow compositions or for playing around to carry with her high damage. Ideal for an A tier hero. Next, we have a cool surprise. It's Mei in A tier. The latest icicle damage buff has rounded out her kit. Just like the others mentioned in this video, her close and long range are equally viable and have been for a while. And with 8 heroes getting their health reduced, Mei naturally gets an even bigger advantage. Rush comps are strong, but to avoid having to force a lot of teamwork and timing, Mei is an easy way to play slow and still be effective. Walls are great for setting up your push, but spamming with icicles and slowing anyone who's too close is also really good for your team's space control. Mei is close to being game-breaking with how uniquely strong her abilities are, so although the rest of the game has really upgraded since the last time she was good, she's strong enough to keep up an A tier for sure. Moving on to the top 2 of A tier, at number 2, it's Echo. She got her health nerfed by 25 HP, but if anyone still stays in A tier after that, it's gotta be Echo. Even though you can't sustain as much damage, Echo still has the most flexible playstyle of the top heroes. The HP nerf will hurt some of the plays you can make. Duels can be harder, and some positions will be easier to punish, but since Echo can always rely on her heavy spam damage if the engages are too difficult, her base level performance is still good. I would say that this change makes her way harder to play, while only reducing her impact slightly. There are a lot of good Echo players out there at this point, so it's not hard to keep going just because of a small health nerf. She may lose out in popularity, although her offensive output is as good as ever. As long as you can handle playing a little bit slower, you'll be getting pretty much the same results. For the top of A tier, it's Cassidy. The game has been fluctuating like crazy, but Cassidy has remained mostly the same. Even with only 20 meters to work with, he does his job really well. Even the weakest part of his kit, Deadeye, has way more depth with the increased speed. Cass is pretty bulky as well, and combined with his hindering flashbang, he's just so good by default. As a hitscan who's normally weak to being dived, he has the damage reduction on his roll and a ton of health to keep him up. The changes this patch haven't affected him much, but he remains a top tier damage dealer with great peel. So the only one who can compete is someone with higher range and comparable utility. In S tier, it's Ashe still on top. Her range is the best right now. That's the easy answer why she's the strongest. But she also has great base abilities and an upgraded Bob. It's no secret that the tank passive made Bob a lot stronger. On top of Coach Gun being one of the only knockbacks in the whole DPS category, Dynamite has its own unique damage over time effect that has a really lasting impression if you can land it. And finally, now that 8 more heroes are at 225 HP, Ashe can kill them in one less shot. When scoped in, you only need 3 shots, so Ashe is now really approaching scary numbers if she can find angles on vulnerable heroes. A lot of heroes have gotten better overall, but Ashe still stands out as the most powerful with the least weaknesses. That's it for the DPS tier list for Season 12. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.